Yeah. Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock, and so I'll now declare the PAR open and welcome all. I have apologies registered from Councillor Ryan and Mayor Kircher, but there are no others. And so, no, it's not. And so if there are no others, can I have a mover and seconder for accepting this, please? Thank you. All those in favour? Sorry. Mover was Councillor Halali, acceptor was Councillor McKay. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And so moving on. Any declarations of interest? If not, we can move through to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 3, confirmation of the previous minutes.
I'll move, Mr. Chair, with one correction.
Sure.
Oh, the correction, sorry, page 8, second to last paragraph. First sentence reads, a preference was made to replacing the words. I don't think you can make a preference. I think it should say a preference was expressed to replace, not replacing. So that would be my correction.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Are there any other amendments? If not, could I ask for somebody to please move and second? Oh, sorry, Councillor Harley accepted. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda are the memorandum. So, I beg your pardon? I put the motion to the meeting. Sorry, my apologies. And against? Thank you. And so now we will move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, memorandum reports, and we have the financial report for the second quarter, which I will hand over to Mr. Hope to talk to.
Thank you. Look, I've added a little bit of extra commentary onto page 13, just in the overall space. I think everyone is aware of it, but really just wanted to highlight the really the ongoing cost pressures that we are facing as a council. We do try and put in as many features as possible to insulate council against sort of unexpected price movements, but the bag of tricks is sort of running out. We have cost escalations built into a lot of our contracts, which are starting to flow through. We are working with our contractors to try and minimise any negative impacts in terms of both cost and sort of service delivery, just because we are trying to operate within a fixed budget. Really dealing with inflation is it's really almost a new phenomenon. Certainly some of us have lived through far higher times of inflation, but it has been very cost movement has been very stable over for quite some time, probably at least the last 10 years. We'd have individual movements. I mean, in particular, insurance moved quite significantly after the Christchurch earthquakes, but really haven't had to face the situation where we've had almost every cost moving or pressure to move at one time. So I think in spite of that, we're reporting a pretty positive result. If you're looking at the operating statement on page 17, the variance at the very high level, at the line item level, is quite small. There are some quite major variances inside of those numbers, but we do try and manage council as a whole rather than as sort of individual pieces, so that if we do have a cost pressure in one place, we try and mitigate that in as wide a place as possible, and yet still maintain services. So I think officers are working hard at that, but I think we'll probably over the next 6 months see more negative variation as especially some of the cost escalations in the contracts really start to bite, especially at sort of our probably busiest period, which is the sort of the January to March time. I think it's a good result for 6 months. We are still waiting for the confirmation of funding from Wakakatahi, but every time they sort of say that they're going to do something, another emergency event comes along. So we were through 3 or 4 events ago now. So it was first work in Nelson Marlborough and then Auckland, and then almost immediately after the cyclone. So the people in Makakatahi that deal with this really do have far more urgent priorities at the moment. So we just might have to wait a wee bit longer.
Do you think there's a risk of that not coming in this financial year?
Mr. Wells.
So this was a question that I put to Mr. Harrison in the rating department a couple of weeks ago, and he assured me that our money comes from a different bucket from the money that all the cyclone funds is held in or will be going into from central government. He's 90% sure that we will receive our money. It's just a question of when that deliberation occurs.
But otherwise, Mr. Wells may have some further comments to add on sort of the more detailed position, but I think it's a reasonable, pretty positive result for 6 months into the year.
No, just any questions or anything that's not clear, let me know. Always, if there's something that you want to explore or go further into between meetings or after a meeting, I'm always fairly free to have a chat.
Thank you. I guess one of the things I was looking at on page 15 under the CapEx table was there's a significant variation in the water spend versus planned, and I'm assuming we're far enough into the year now that will be difficult to make up.
It is currently two. We were hoping the original plan was to get some work underway pre-Christmas, so that's why probably a reasonably what turned out to be optimistic number in terms of budget. But I am aware that probably just had a $5 million contract close and another $5 million contract that is in the market. So the expectation is that there would be a pretty rapid catch up in the remaining 4 months of the year. So the water team is also looking at what is achievable and affordable, and will bring a modified program back to council in the near future.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions, if I may. Well, actually, probably 4 in total, but on page 13, can you just unpack under council position? It shows that we have an operating deficit of 5,190,000 as against a budgeted deficit of 3,679. It's about 1.5 million more than we budgeted. And then the next paragraph says overall operating revenue is over budget by 2,385. This variance arises because of the claim for 2102 for emergency works, which is yet to be approved and paid. Well, are we required to account for it even though we haven't got it? Are we required to deem it to be revenue even though it isn't here yet?
So we have been accruing for that revenue ever since the event, because in the terms of our arrangements with NZTA, it is to be paid. And that's always been our understanding. That's been the outcome of every previous emergency event that we've incurred over the past decade or so. NZTA have always come to the party and honoured that commitment. So there's no reason for revenue. It is genuinely expected to be received. And so, yes, it's additional to the budgeted revenue. It's a completely unexpected amount of income that we expect to receive. And in fact, we need to receive it because our cash flow without it is somewhat precarious at the moment.
Okay. Right. So, yeah, so it's an accounting thing in a sense, although even though the money isn't there, we're confident it will be. Next page, property, plant and equipment. Budgeted figure represents projected year-end position. after the triennial evaluation of roading and bridges, which is budgeted to add 44.75 million to council's fixed asset holdings. I know we're not going to recognise it until June 2023, but that's going to have a rating impact, isn't it? Because presumably a number of those structures will be depreciated.
Yes, it will. Yes, yeah, we should expect for it to have an impact on rates, particularly around depreciation in the 24 year, and that is being accounted for in the 24 annual plan that we're working on at the moment. There will be an implication for 23 as well, because we will probably have to recognise some of that additional cost this year. And currently, our fair value assessment that we've completed for audit requirements at the end of June 22 suggests that that increase might well be 70 or 75 million. So there's been a few surprises. It adds to what Paul was saying before about cost pressures. Everything is going up, and the way they value stuff is to apply today's values against yesterday's assets.
Being slowly bankrupted by the depreciation, I fear, but let's wait until we get the annual plan sorted. Absolutely. A couple of other questions on page 17. You've got the expenses. I'm looking at personnel costs, and the 12 months from last year was 13,657,000. Then we've got the budget for this year, 15,067. Now we say that we've saved money because we haven't employed people. We've saved 203,000. But do I read that correctly? In 1 year, have our personnel costs gone up $1.5 million?
So that's the budget which council approved back in June of 22. So you were aware and presumably reviewed that with us prior to that through the various workshops that we had. But yes, that was the budget that we set. It's based on managers' estimations of the manpower, the person power that they would require in order to deliver the services.
Okay.
So no, you're comparing the 22 actual to 23 budget.
Correct.
You may remember we actually reported quite a significant underspend in the personnel cost in the year ended 22 as well. So no, the budget to budget comparison would not be that amount. It was around 350,000. I think the net underspend last year. So
no, thanks, Paul. Yes, you're correct. Got two more questions in page 18. I'm just curious to know, I know that we've had revaluations of property and partners. Where was the airport revalued? Just a matter of interest. Okay, right, that's fine. We can presumably decide to unfund some of that depreciation if we want to. Look, my last question on page 21. I'm just trying to make sense of the cash and deposits information you're giving us. Because if I look under the heading cash equivalents, term deposits, then they tell you that adds up to the 3,640,000, that more or less, that's what's at the top, BNZ current accounts call and blah, blah, blah. If I add that correctly, those things come to the 364. But then we've got another term deposit of 1.5 million. I'm just trying to work out how that fits in with, because I know there's a 1.5 million in the BNZ deposits, but if you take that away, then none of the numbers add up. Am I missing something there, or?
Yeah, possibly, because of the accounting rules and regulations and what audit requires of us as well. Any term deposits with maturity dates beyond 90 days from their original inception date must be treated as term deposits, whereas those with maturity dates less than 90 days are treated as basically cash because they are of such a short-term nature. So what that table, and this is now in the Treasury report, what that table is showing you is a summary of where the cash is, and it shows that we had a total of 4.64 million, which is not a bad position to be in. Yeah, that's effectively what it's trying to show you, along with where the money is held. For your information, there are a couple of other bank accounts, one at the ASB and one at the Westpac, with about $40 in there.
Yeah, so it
Really
ties
would make
into
no
the
difference
disclosure
to that.
on page 19. So it ties into this disclosures in page 19.
Okay.
You can see the 3.6 and the 1.5 both sitting under the current assets, and classification, as Mr. Wells explained, is really because of the 90-day requirement.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, forgive me, I thought it was under the next section, but I'm trying to work out again, if you can explain to me, our interest income has gone up $94,000. We've earned $426,000 in interest for the period ending September 30. But then we look at, if we look at page 25, our borrowing costs are up 20.7%. So yes, we're earning a bit more, but we're spending a lot more on. So it's costing us a lot more to borrow, right?
That 20.7% only equates to $80,000. So our borrowing costs to September actual 489 versus 405. So what the 20.7% feels like a big headline number. The number itself is not so much.
Okay.
So it is true that our borrowings from the LGFA are costing us more, and we currently have some of our external loans to other parties at fixed rates that are not as good, which we can only reset in terms of the loan agreements when they come due. So we are caught, and this is a piece of work that Bancorp is doing for us at the moment to work out what the best strategy is for managing that going forward. And since we're now in the Treasury report, if I can take you quickly to the table of LGFA borrowings, which is on the next page, and it shows free money. It shows $2.5 million with a maturity date of 15th of April 28 and no interest rate. I can assure you that's incorrect. The interest rate that applies to that loan is 5.09%, and I'm not sure how that escaped the quality control review.
Thank you. So you're just following up on Mr. Wells' comment. We are working with Bancorp to get them to help us understand what we call the mismatch book and what risk we have there and how we can potentially minimise that as much as possible. Councillor Blackley, you were next.
Thank you. I just had a query on page 22. The interest rates are listed for most of the arrangements, with the exception of the Civic Trust. I just wanted to understand what the arrangement is there around interest and repayments, and then secondly, when we look, we just talked about the cash and deposits position on page 21. If we compare that against page 26 and the overall cash position, I'm just wondering, what would our situation have been if the cash deposits weren't sitting where they are now, and is that in direct relation to not receiving the funds from Waka Kotahi?
So to answer the first question, the Civic Trust loan is at effectively a floating interest rate, which varies each quarter in line with our internal loan rates. So it would be misleading to provide an actual interest rate there when it is already historic and will be determined with the next one and so on. So hence the reason that there's no interest rate published there. And I'm not sure I fully understood your second question. So could you put it in simple terms so that I can?
I may be overcomplicating it, but I just want, if our cash and deposits position was sitting at the 23 year end. Actually, that's the answer, isn't it? That's the year end, and this is the current position.
So if you think back to the Treasury strategy and earlier Treasury reports, and maybe we've modified them prior to you coming on council, but we used to refer to the cyclical nature of council's cash flow, which is driven by the receipt of rates revenue. And our rates are struck at the start of the year, and we have 4 quarterly rate payment dates. So there's always a massive influx of cash around those dates, and those funds are held either in term deposits or in our call account until such time as the next one comes along, by which time we have spent them all. So the anticipation always is that at the end of June, we will have a much lower cash position than we have during the year. In February, we're looking at December here. So November was a large cash month, and by the end of December, we had spent some of that. February, which we've just, in fact, rates payment day was yesterday. So we've got a lot of money currently. It'll be all gone by the end of April.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. So on page 26 then, which was kind of the other aspect of the question is, at say December of this year, where the red line, the 2023 line is showing what the overall cash position would be. Is that reflective of us receiving the funds from Waka Kotahi, i.e. the accrued result?
So you're referring to the graph. Yeah. So that looks at the position for the second quarter only. So there isn't a projection there to year end. So that's looking at the movements in cash over the quarter ended December. The red line looks at the current year, and the previous, the other colours are the prior 3 years, which show that we are in a worse position than we have been during that time. Prior to Mr. Neal's involvement a few months ago, we would have excluded from this our external lending to other parties. So that would have shown everything below the line, which was quite a negative way to look at things. So this now encompasses all of our investments.
And sorry to answer the question. That's the explanation, but yeah, this is purely cash position. So it's literally the cash in the bank, or the loans we've got in place. So no, the Waka Kotahi, because it is an accrual, doesn't have an impact on this. So yeah, we're expecting, it should have been almost up at the 5 million mark if we had received that money in time.
So where it says 31st December 2022, if you're interpreting the 2023 line, what is that's December? It's the 2023 year, and that is up to December 22.
Councillor McKeown.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. So, going back a few pages to page 22. So these other investments and loans and advances, a lot of them are just paying interest only. Is there a provision in these ones that aren't paying principal to start paying a principal return? And if it does, how does that affect money in and money out as opposed to what we're paying out in interest and receiving in interest? Is the first question.
So the terms of the Observatory Retirement Village loan require no repayment of principal before June 24. And that's one of the reasons why we had to borrow from the old GFA back in June of 22, because there was an anticipation in the budget that we would receive $1.5 million from them. So that changed things for us at the end of June. The Cooral True Irrigation Company is paying interest currently because the terms of their loan require require principal repayments over a 30-year table mortgage with a balloon payment at the end of it, but those principal payments don't start until 2 years after practical completion, which happened in the past 6 months or so. So we're still some way off seeing principal repayments for those. The Civic Trust has a portion which is interest only, and a portion which they are paying interest, they are paying principal on both, but only small amounts. The Health Services Company, we are waiting for, well, really theirs is contingent on receiving an adequate contractual arrangement with the new health authority. Hopefully that then will enable them to start making principal repayments, if not a full repayment, which would be my preference, but we'll see how that translates into reality.
So a couple other quick questions. Do we pay principal on the loans we've got? And I see there's 2 ready to turn over in April. Are they going to be turned over or prepaid, or how is that going to work?
So we are required to repay loans from the LGFA on their maturity date, but we normally would put in place an arrangement to roll those over and refinance them. And that's normally done same day, and we only pay the difference. There will be, in some instances, there's interest to be paid in advance. Some instances, there's if we're changing from a commercial paper arrangement to a bond or a note, then we will have to effectively pay them 2.5% of the loan principal to take up our required offering of borrower notes. It's quite a complicated regime, but so far we have not repaid any principal and reduced our borrowings.
Thank you. And one final question, Ian. The Alps to Ocean I see is in budgeted for funding of 700K. Is that going into the rates, or will it be rated? Where's that money coming from? Sorry.
Can you show me where you're looking to find that? Because all these page numbers are confusing me now.
Page 15.
15. Are you going way back there?
So just to clarify, Councillor McCone, that's 70,000 rather than 700 on the Alps to Ocean spend.
That's okay.
So you're okay with that one, because I finally found it.
We've certainly, in relation to the Alps to Ocean, we've certainly made an application to MBEI to receive funding for the repairs for the July flood damage. Pretty sure we've had confirmation and acceptance that they will be funding that, and now we'll put in just working on an application for the next stages of the Alps to Ocean.
So sorry, ongoing funding and maintenance is funded by where?
Ongoing maintenance is funded by the 2 councils from rates.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the report? No.
I'll make the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Halali. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. So I now. My apologies. And I now would like to call on somebody for us to move into public excluded. Councillor Harley, seconded Councillor McKone. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Thank you. So we'll now move to public excluded.